Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Chanavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Shtutara Shata Shishimat Abhacharana Vinta Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Shtutara Shata Shishimat Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Preme Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Brihad Maridanga Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Tai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the same devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the same devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the same devotees, Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Nanchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayen Nasta Prayeshu Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasluke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bhaktya Deshatarine Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Anchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvya Evacha Bhatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 15, Text 18. Yes, here it is. Paravatam yabrita sarasa chakravakam Datyuha hamsa shukatitiri brahinamya Kalahalo viramate chiramatram uccair Bringadipe harikatam ivagayamane Paravatanya britasara sachakravakam Datyuha hamsa shukatitiri barhinam yam Kalahalo viramate chiramatra uccair Bringadipe harikatam ifagayamani Paravatanya britasara sachakravakam Datyuha hamsa shukatitiri brahminam yam Barhinam yam Kalahalo viramate chiramatram uccair Bringa dipe harikatam ivagayamane Paravatam yabritasara sachakravakam Datyuha hamsa shukatitiri barhinam yam Kalahalo viramate chiramatram uccair Bringadipe harikatam ivagayamani Paravatanya britasara sachakravakam Datyuha hamsa shukatitiri barhinam Kalahalo viramate chiramatram uccair Bringadipe harikatam ivagayamane Paravatanya britasara sachakravakam Datyuha hamsa shukatitiri barhinam yam Kalahalo viramate chitramatram uccair Bringadipe Harikatam Imani Parvata pigeons Anyabrita Kuko Sarasa crane Chakravaka Datyuha Galinul. Is it right? Galli. In Italian, gallo means the rooster. This is gallinul. Hamsa, swan. Shuka, parrot. Tatiri, titiri, partridge. Barhinam, of the peacock. Ya, witch. Kolaha, la, tumult. Viramati, stops. Achiramatram, temporarily. Uchaich, loudly. Bringa Adipe, king of the bumblebees. Harikatam, the glories of the Lord. Ivam, us. Gayamani, while singing. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When the king of the bees hums in a high pitch, singing the glories of the Lord, there is a temporary lull in the noise of the pigeon, the cuckoo, the crane, the chakravaka, the swan, the parrot, the partridge, and the peacock. Such transcendental birds stop their own singing simply to hear the glories of the Lord. This verse reveals the absolute nature of Vaikuntha. There is no difference between the birds there and the human residents. The situation in the spiritual sky is that everything is spiritual and variegated. Spiritual variegatedness means that everything is animate. There is nothing inanimate. Even the trees, the ground, the plants, the flowers, the birds, and the beasts are all on the level of Krishna consciousness. The special feature of Vaikuntha Loka is that there is no question of sense gratification. In the material world, even an ass enjoys his sound vibration, but in the Vaikunthas, such nice birds as the peacock, the chakravaka, and the cuckoo prefer to hear the vibration of the glories of the Lord from the bees. The principles of devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting, are very prominent in the Vaikuntha world. Once again, the translation. When the king of the bees hums in a high pitch, singing the glories of the Lord, there is a temporary lull in the noise of the pigeon, the cuckoo, the crane, the chakravaka, the swan, the parrot, the partridge, and the peacock. Such transcendental birds stop their own singing simply to hear the glories of the Lord. So, here in this verse we have a very interesting, very beautiful scenery explained, how all these transcendental birds, as Prabhupada explains in the purport, which are obviously all cooperating for the pleasure of their lordships. When they hear the buzzing sound of the king of the bumblebee, which is actually glorifying, singing the glories of the Lord, they all stop their singing in order to hear from him, which is apparently an insignificant insect. This is how we would see it maybe in the material world, you know. Big crane, you know, he's doing his own thing, and the cuckoo, beautiful bird, and the peacock, and so forth, you know. They are, Krishna has expressed his artistical nature, his artistical talent in creating the different colorful species birds. And then the bumblebee, also beautiful, but much smaller. And who hears the bumblebee among all this natural orchestra when all these birds are singing? But the king bumblebee, in this case, was singing the glories of the Lord. So therefore, all these beautiful birds, which might seem superior, they stopped and they humbly listened to the bumblebee, which is something very interesting to hear. Very interesting for us to learn about the transcendental nature of the spiritual world, which is completely different. In the spiritual world, everybody is assisting everybody else, or everybody is cooperating humbly in order to achieve the same end. In comparison to what we are doing here in the material world, me against the world, divide and conquer, you know. Let me have the most money, let me have the most power, so that everybody else can be subdued under my will. And I will rule the world with, just like Hiranyakashipu, installing fear in the hearts of everybody. No cooperation, of course. Nobody wants to cooperate in general for the general welfare. Everybody is on his own. There are small units, small groups, and with the advance of Kali Yuga, these groups are even becoming smaller. We see the family unit, it's even compromised nowadays. Families are so much distressed and so forth. As a contrast to the spiritual world. So we have much to learn in terms of not just philosophy, but the culture, which is very, very important, especially for us Westerners, where we are born in this type of culture, dividing culture, and very, very centered around pleasing my own senses. So, in the spiritual world, the king of the bumblebees was singing the glories of the Lord. And we have the equivalent also in the material world, very fortunately. And that is the spiritual master. He is singing the glories of the Lord. He's constantly trying to enlighten the fallen conditioned souls by, in many ways, by trying to preach, by trying to distribute books, distribute Holy Prasadam, or just do Harinam. Just as Prabhupada did, the classical example that we all know. He came here to New York, and one day he simply went out to the park, and he sang Hare Krishna for hours, I think, right? For 3 hours. Same tune, 3 hours. Nowadays we would say that's boring, same tune, 3 hours, but apparently that's not the most important thing, but the purity and the devotion of the spiritual master. He was able to attract so many souls, and all these personalities, they took up the process and became purified, and they became residents of Vaikuntha, even in this world. So the life of the aspiring devotee is 100% centered around pleasing the spiritual master, who is the living example of Anyabilashita Shunyam, or Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam. Without pure bhaktis, without any tinges, without any desires for self-aggrandizement on different levels, without desire for fruitive work, for personal things, without desire for liberation, without desire for liberating ourselves from the suffering that we're experiencing. Because the pure devotees, they are ready to suffer even for the service of Krishna. They don't want to get anything for themselves. They just want to serve causelessly, every instance. So in this way, the disciple, the aspiring devotee, he is following the example of the Guru, which is the representative of the original spiritual master, Balaram, who is expanding from Krishna. And the spiritual master, he is acting in our life through different via medias. We know there are different types, like the spiritual master who is giving initiation, the diksha, but we also are taking instructions, so that's the shiksha spiritual master. The spiritual master who is connecting us with spiritual life, with Krishna consciousness. That person, he might not even be so much advanced in bhakti himself, but still he is greatly honored because he took his time and sacrificed to bring somebody to the path of bhakti. So such a person is very very important in our life, the Varna Pradakshika Guru. And we also have Krishna himself, who is interacting directly with the fallen conditioned souls in the form of Paramatma, or the Chaitya Guru from within. So Krishna manifests his potencies to guide the fallen conditioned souls in many ways, externally as these different types of spiritual master, internally as Paramatma, and he is constantly trying to give hints. He's constantly trying to give instructions to the aspiring devotee. And one very interesting thing we find in the 11th canto is that when one is really sincere, he can see the potency of the spiritual master in in many aspects of his life. We have this chapter of Pingala, the prostitute Pingala. And in the same chapter, it was explained how there was this Brahmana who learned from 24 spiritual masters, I think, if I'm not wrong, or I don't remember exactly, but he was basically learning from simple events around him, simple phenomena that was happening in the forest. Just like, for example, he saw the moth, which was attracted by fire. So the moth is so attracted to enjoy this heat and light that he immediately goes to the fire, and what happens is that he dies, he burns immediately. So he learned that in the same way, when a person tries to engage in lusty activities, try to follow his lusty desires, in the same way he gets burned by the same lust, becomes even more and more entangled in conditioned life. Or for example, he saw the birds, not the birds, but there was one bird that found one piece of a meat in the forest, which was left there from a carcass, and happily went there and started gnawing on this piece of meat, and immediately some other birds, vultures, they saw that bird, and they tried to attack her and steal the meat. And when this was happening, when the birds were coming, just about to start fighting and steal the piece of meat, that bird dropped it and just flew away. And at that exact time, the bird felt a relief, a superior happiness. So in the same way, when a person renounces the object of sense gratification, he also feels relieved, he feels superior happiness from his false position. So in this way, when one is humble enough, he can learn from so many things, from so many events around him. And even Krishna can manifest himself through simple people and animals and just omens. The humble eyes have far sight. And in the same way, when a disciple is humble and submissive towards the spiritual master, Krishna is very much pleased, and he is giving instructions in this way, because as we know, the spiritual master, he is the direct representative of Krishna. The success of this aspiring devotee lies in executing with pure heart these instructions. Sometimes very simple, sometimes more complex. Sometimes we can't believe that we are receiving such a difficult instruction. Sometimes we are thinking, "Oh my God, why is my spiritual master giving me such a simple and stupid thing to do? I'm not so stupid. Why would I do this?" But Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, "Tad vidi pranipatena paripashnena sevaya." Upadekshanti te gyanam gyaninas tattvadarshinaha. Very important verse, very important pivotal point that every devotee has to not just learn, but internalize. It takes some effort actually to understand this mood of servant, which we are all lacking, actually. Sometimes we are even serving for exchange of a few pieces of glass instead of opening ourselves to receive the diamonds of the instruction of the spiritual master. Many times we don't understand this. And many times we don't understand that Krishna is always looking within and is giving direction. When we're doing something wrong, when we are cheating somebody, when we're offending somebody, we can feel it inside. Krishna is giving directions. If we are really willing to know, we will know. And in this way, by serving humbly, by doing just menial service for the spiritual master, by just being constantly open to our shikshas, to our senior devotees, who can all instruct us. Doesn't matter. One can be very advanced, and one can sometimes even get instructions from even junior devotees, if one is humble enough. As we know, the ideal example of the devotee is that when he comes to a very elevated platform, he is seeing everybody as his own spiritual master, which is quite far out, such a level of humility. Prabhupada exemplified such a exalted position many times. He literally felt like his spiritual master is sending all these boys, these young boys, to help him in his mission, and he was literally feeling like his humble servant who is giving the Vedic knowledge, of course. And many times also as a menial servant. In the beginning, he was organizing the feasts. He was cleaning himself. He didn't ask anybody for anything. He was just waiting for them to open up. He was just waiting for them to understand the natural connection between the disciple and the superior spiritual master. So the success of this movement, the success of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, is all dependent on this very important principle. It's all dependent on how much we understand on the individual basis the principle of Guru Tattva, how much we understand the guidance which Krishna is providing in our life in the guise of so many figures. And as I was saying, sometimes we can learn from natural events and omens. Krishna is always sending signals. Just like Kadamakarna Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj, in his lecture sometimes he's honestly sharing his realization that he's never seen Krishna. Not that he's never seen Krishna, but he might not have seen the spiritual body of Krishna in this life, but he has seen the hand of Krishna. How Krishna is arranging his life, how Krishna is putting him in a difficult situation so that he can become more humble and receptive. And in this way, we all have to understand this, and every single day try to look in our heart and seek for instructions. In the same way, we have to look in the friendship and companionship of our fellow peers and seniors and seek service, seek instructions. Whenever we're feeling confused, it's not that there is a misunderstanding, for example, among devotees that, especially younger devotees, that my Diksha Guru is the only one and he's only giving me instructions, but that's not correct. One has to hear Krishna consciousness from so many other personalities in order to understand it from so many points of view. And one has to surrender ultimately, just become a simple servant. The success of our life depends only on the fact of how much we are surrendered to this principle. The success of the mission of ISKCON. How much are we determined to develop a good relationship with the disciples of Srila Prabhupada or the disciples of the disciples because of Srila Prabhupada. Because this is how we are receiving the knowledge which is coming from Krishna, the Supreme Spiritual Master. Only by the mercy of the senior devotees we can actually advance. So we cannot neglect the parampara system. We have to always remember this and try to be a humble servant. The success in every aspect of our life, either personal, either in our family, economical aspect, everything is dependent on this. Nothing comes before Krishna. Nothing comes before the instruction of the Guru. This, if one is serious about spiritual life, if one really wants to reap the mature fruits of bhakti, one has to adopt this lifestyle, this humble lifestyle. And just like Prabhupada gave a very simple sutra, everybody should look forward, regardless of his ashram, age, sex, background, group, indoctrination, religion. One has to just, as Prabhupada said, just do something nice for Krishna. Everybody should look how to please Krishna with love. Krishna doesn't want anything else. Krishna is the proprietor of everything. He is Atmarama. Even when we're offering food, we are offering what? Just like taking a little bit of Ganges water and offering it back to Ganga. But Krishna, he wants our love. He wants us to understand that we have to love him as much as he loves us, unconditionally. So everything is in our life is dependent on this. We shouldn't be endeavoring to adjust our material situation. Just like I said, regardless of our position. Our position will be adjusted only if we put Krishna in the center, only if we try to please Krishna in every aspect of our life. When we dedicate our work for Krishna, our family, our children, when we endeavor to make them Krishna conscious, when we endeavor to just serve humbly, just to have faith of whatever instructions the Spiritual Master has given us. And in this way, success will come. And this is not some kind of esoteric principle which is very like a fairy tale, difficult to believe. we have the example. We see in our movement, fortunately, we have many devotees who have gotten grip on this fact and have become successful just by humbly serving the devotees, just by humbly engaging even in menial service. Then gradually Krishna expanded his service. Gradually Krishna acted through all these agents and helped the disciple to develop his talents. And at one point, when one becomes purified, when one just lets go of his own agenda, then the magic happens. And we have the examples. You can just look of all our senior devotees and sannyasis in the movement. But if we decide to act whimsically and follow the spiritual master of our mind, then we will be doomed to failure, because our mind is designed to kill us. Our mind is a device in the hands of Maya, which is just performing her own devotional service. Her service is to keep us in illusion, because we wanted to be in illusion. Nothing bad about Maya. But at the present moment, if we just decide to act whimsically and try to act independently by deciding our own fate, by anything in our life, one can surrender in every aspect. But if we cannot, and if we just go on to do whatever we think is best, then eventually we will achieve nothing. This is what happens. We cannot trust our mind. We have to surrender our mind and our free will in the relationship of the spiritual master, in the relationship with the devotees. We should never exemplify our pride through being argumentative and diplomatic. That is a symbol of conditioning. Nobody should engage in these activities, or at least no one who is interested in spiritual life. So in the end of the day, a devotee has to develop this serving attitude, serving everybody around him, and just when opportunity arises, the intelligent individual will take it up and sacrifice his own time and comfort to please thy neighbor, to love thy neighbor. This is ultimately what one should aspire to have. As we know, we have even the examples of the Goswamis, very humble, very big saints. So in this way, if we just read the books and follow in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada and his disciples, the disciples of his disciples, our life will be successful. This is what I wanted to say. If there are any comments, questions, chastisements.
Also interesting that in the spiritual world, the animals, I guess they can speak. Here it's saying that he's glorifying the Lord. maybe he's glorifying the Lord just by humming, but evidently he can speak because evidently all the beings in the spiritual world have full, as Prabhupada puts it, Krishna consciousness. So there's no reason that the bee couldn't comprehend as well as anybody else what's this nature of the Supreme Lord and glorify. So I thought both of those things were interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought about it. I was thinking that maybe I can speak more about the variegatedness of the spiritual world and some other different pastimes. But when I read about how the king of the bumblebee was being listened by everybody else, I remembered about, I think in the Guru Puja song, it is said that we are listening, that the spiritual master is always glorifying the Lord. So this is how I connected it. Anything else? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Radha Govinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.